in SharePoint, but it's awesome being able to be here live today at Ignite. And so typically when we do SharePoint Power Hour, we do demos, and we talk about things that are basically topics that are things that you can do in SharePoint Office 365 that are more out of the box, business user focused, not super hardcore technical dev or admin topics. And we usually do a lot of demos. A lot of the times I make things up as I go. But but today we plan on talking about Ignite and talking about all of the different updates that have come out, things that we're excited about the product. So, what do you think so far?
We've heard, but yeah, I think we're definitely excited to talk through that. I think we're trying to, and also I know we have quite a few viewers watching online, and I think we're trying to connect to our chat, so hopefully we'll be able to get through some questions as well.
When we do our show, typically we have a Slack channel where we have comments and questions and discussions going on, and that's one of the fun things about having a live show is that not only do you not necessarily know what's going to happen with the demos that I do, but we get to talk about it, chat with everybody throughout the whole show. So we have a ton of updates. I'm not sure how much interaction we're going to be able to do through Slack today anyway, but we're just going to go ahead and start. We have Teams updates, and Teams is like one of the biggest things that they're talking about here this week. We have Teams, we have SharePoint, and we have Power Apps and Flow. Just a lot of a long list of things to go over. So Teams, I think Teams is a good place to start.
Yeah, Teams is a great place to start because I think surprisingly it seems to be one of the most popular topics. I've noticed that like every single session about Teams seems to have like a line around the corner kind of thing. With people trying to get in to hear about, the updates and the new things that are coming.
Right.
And they actually said that it's, I think, reaching 329,000 organizations now, which is pretty remarkable. And it's the fastest growing.
Fastest growing Office application in Microsoft's history. Holy cow.
Yeah, definitely.
So just a little level set. Teams is... It's a chat program that also technically it has a SharePoint site collection behind the scenes, and so Teams is a user interface where you can collaborate on documents and connect to a whole bunch of different services and have store documents, but behind the scenes it's a SharePoint site. So Teams is SharePoint and Teams is Skype for Business. Skype for Business is actually going away. And Teams will be everyone's new chat program instead of
and meeting space.
And it's great because every conversation you have in Teams is contextual. You can have conversations about documents and about projects you're working on, and have conversations in the different teams. So, what are some of the? Go ahead and tell me about some of the great things that you heard about updates in Teams.
Yeah, so I think one of the first areas we kind of heard about were updates to meetings. So we know that it's, we're moving more from the Skype meetings into the Teams meetings. That's kind of getting pushed and stuff. And so they announced something that's kind of funny. I don't know if anybody remembers. I think it was like a year or two ago where the gentleman was on BBC and his children came in behind him. Like I think you guys saw that. That was hilarious. I think I still watch that because it's so funny.
Yeah.
But they basically announced an ability to do a background blur, so something that guy would have loved to have had in that moment, which will actually blur, keep you clear but blur your background, so that way it doesn't matter where you're taking meetings from. It'll kind of keep that private.
So I don't even need that giant green screen.
Exactly.
In my house.
Yeah, Laura has a whole huge setup.
I just can blur my background now.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And then also just meeting recordings. So that was something that people were wanting in Teams meetings, and that's going to be in there now.
Not only can you record the meeting as you're having it, but it's recording all the words are being indexed everything that's being said in the meeting.
Yeah.
So when you do searches.
Exactly. That's another thing that I think Teams has been a big thing, and then like the AI cognitive stuff, which is kind of related to that, has also been kind of like a theme that we've seen through every single one of the sessions. We've seen that. We've heard about in SharePoint sessions. We've heard about in Power App sessions, Team sessions. So it's kind of interesting to see how ingrained that's becoming into.
You're getting a transcript of every meeting, and you can just go search for when they talked about such and such topic anytime, and be able to jump in and understand what was going on there. So
exactly,
it's a big one.
Yeah, and then also they just talked about, I guess some of the technologies like Polycom and things like that are actually starting to integrate more with Teams.
So
they
hardware
have booths here.
integrating with Teams.
Yeah, and they have booths here where you can actually demo and look at some of those technologies. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then also, I think one other thing that I've seen a lot of sessions on, and which I think is pretty interesting, is the Firstline workers in Teams. So they have kind of pretty much an entire initiative for that. So there's the home. It's all mobile. So it's a Firstline worker
staffing. Is what they call it, right?
Exactly. So they have a home page that they can go to in their app, and they're going to be able to clock in and clock out and do things like that. Check their schedules and that kind of thing. And then they also
swap
have
schedules with other workers who
you
have a set schedule of different time slots when people are supposed to work, and you can go trade shifts with someone in this app and. Just clock in just from your phone when you get to work.
Yeah, so they're definitely doing more to kind of bring them into Teams as well as your information workers that are currently using it quite a bit. So that's really interesting. And then just in general, what I would call probably more for the information workers in general is the image annotations, kind of goes to what we were talking about with the video recordings. It's just being able to get metadata from those images and make them easily stored. And also admins are now able to limit somebody from saving those images on their device. So basically they can, when they upload something into Teams, it doesn't necessarily, they can stop it from being stored on their device locally, which is nice.
There have been a lot of just admin control improvements across the board. That's pretty, just all the different products have had not only user experience but better admin experiences, because that's my background, server admin, and you like to have more granular control over things and being able, especially with external users and files on people's computers. They've added a lot.
Yeah, because they were even showing kind of a little bit about the Teams Admin Center and just how many more options and features you have in that admin center. You know what I mean? I think originally when we would go in there, it was 3 settings or something.
Yeah, originally it was, do you want to use Teams or not? And you just turned it on.
Yes or no. That's pretty much it. But now we actually see a pretty thorough admin center that covers a lot of different things. So that's really good to see.
Yeah.
Something else is the specific industries. So they were actually highlighting, I think, specifically healthcare. And how they came up with things for healthcare inside of Teams, like apps and things like that you could use right inside of Teams. And I thought that was really interesting and shows that they realize that not all industries are created equally, and that they need different types of apps for different types of jobs. So that kind of going along with the Firstline workers. I thought that was pretty cool to see.
And a lot of the Power Apps demos have also demoed the way different industries can use Power Apps. To give people ideas. No matter what your company does, you can create Power Apps. We'll get into Power Apps, but
we'll get there. And then I would say they've just kind of showed some tighter integration with SharePoint for Teams, so things like full list and library capabilities.
With column
formatting and everything like that.
Yeah, column formatting is a big thing that they talked about. Yeah. Of course, we heard this at Ignite last year, but they added a nicer user experience.
Yeah, and that's something actually having under our SharePoint area is that
it kind of blurs together Teams and SharePoint.
So which is what we really need.
Which is
good. Need to be a clear thing. So we talked about the admin center and also dynamic groups. So there will actually eventually be an ability.
Audiences?
So ability to
create
groups off of attributes in Active Directory. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, so that audiences have been around for a while, and if you're an old school SharePoint admin like me, you could always go into the user profile service and define audiences, which was, you can say this audience is everyone who has marketing as part of their job title, or marketing in their department name, or reports to a certain person, and you can just say those people, whichever criteria they fall under, they would be the marketing audience. So you could create all these audiences that are dynamic, that aren't like groups that you have to go add people to. People just become part of the audience. So that's a feature it's been there for years and years, but it kind of wasn't getting the love. So people, the community has conveyed that audiences are important, conveyed that probably, in user voice, that we need to have that work with all the new modern everything that's going on. And so audiences have gotten some love now. Awesome.
Yeah. And also that you can use AD groups within those, which is that was a challenge in the past. I remember having to create those as separate things, and then that was always fun. And then I think pretty much one of the things, which of course is like going into the area that Laura and I don't always go into, which is the dev side.
Not a dev.
But there's definitely a lot of stuff being done with the being able to tap into the Microsoft Graph API and create custom things within Teams, which we talked a little bit about that industry and how they're doing customizations there, but also
bots.
Just giving developers, apps and bots, giving developers more power in Teams, which is really nice because, like we said, industries are all different. People need different things, so being able to do that easily.
Bots are fun, and even if you're not a dev, they've made some of that very approachable.
Yeah.
There's a nice little easy online interface that if you don't know what a bot is that concept of going into a chat and having an automatic conversation with a robot. It's not a person, and it's just programmed to respond certain ways to certain things you say. And Slack has an easy one where in Slack, as the admin, I have a setting where I can say if someone says this, just automatically say this. So that's the concept of what a bot is. But you can, Microsoft has a nice little easy web page that even if you're not a dev, you can get started defining, creating your own bots. And so they've taken that pretty far, and there was a whole session I went to yesterday about.
Yeah, and I would definitely say if you're here and you are a Teams admin or you're going to be adminning Teams, definitely check out those sessions. Even if you're like, well, I'm not a dev, it might be worthwhile to look because it could be something that you could easily do in a low-code, no-code situation.
Right,
so.
and we have, we run a training company, and we teach training classes, and our students have accounts in our tenant, in our IW Mentor tenant. So I was pondering doing some fun things with Teams and bots and being able to have something for the students to interact with. That's what I plan on playing around with that some more and really getting into it.
Yeah, Laura has one right now where anybody says power ups in our chat, and it's like, did somebody say power ups? Like the bot pops up. Which is funny at first, and then after like the 10 or so times, maybe not so funny, but yeah, we can definitely do some cool stuff. All right, so I think I think that covers there's probably other announcements. That's how many announcements have been made. So we probably may not get to everything. But I think the key takeaway for Teams is just that this is the way people want to collaborate now in like team situations, and seeing them giving options for like the first-line workers in specific industries and people in the field is really important and really cool to see. And I actually was really, as I like Teams, I've used it, but kind of sometimes you like live in that vacuum where you're not really sure like what's going on in the world, right? If people are actually using this. And so I think it's been really, really interesting to come here and see like just how popular it is and how interested people are, and I think that's really cool and really good.
Right, and so I think that the way that Teams, it just philosophically, over the years, people have, you're in your email all day, every day. Everybody's in their email, and that's kind of what has been the center of people's worlds for like 20 years or so. But then, you also have chat, and you can have individual conversations. Then SharePoint comes along, and I think what a lot of people, we struggle to adopt SharePoint because you want it to be everything to be in your inbox in that one place that you go, and SharePoint is like, to a lot of end users, it was like a separate thing they had to do, a separate place they had to remember to go to do anything with their files in SharePoint. So I think that it's genius of Microsoft to bring that into creating Teams as one big product that you can just have running on your desktop all day, and have your messaging, all the conversations you're having, and the files that meetings, you're having conversation with, and the meetings, and you can do apparently live streaming meetings now. I attended one the other day that Mark Cashman did online. I was like, I'm just anonymous, and I'm just showing up in this Teams meeting. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's really neat.
So to me, that's what Microsoft's defined, this new just sort of one place you can go, and you could just have it running all day, and that's just where you're doing everything. And so even if you're not technically going to a SharePoint site, you're using SharePoint because that's where it's storing your files.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's move into SharePoint OneDrive area.
Yes.
So I think this was probably one of the coolest sessions I've been to in a while, because Jeff came out and basically said, like, we're going to demo until dawn. And when you hear that in a Microsoft session, you get really excited because, sometimes it's really just all about the demos, right? You just want to see what the technology is and what you're getting. No fluffy talk,
demos.
Just right to it. And I think the session actually went, it was the last session of the day, and it went pretty well over time.
Wow.
And people were just like into it. They were so excited through the whole thing. So that was a lot of fun to go to that one.
Our community's we get excited.
Yeah, we get really
this
excited
stuff.
about, like, I think, like, they were talking about, we'll talk about, like, mega menus and stuff, but there was just, like, huge cheers in the audience for things like that, so that was really fun. So yeah, a couple of different things. Obviously, there's a lot with pages, so we can talk about that. But some just like little like one-off things I noticed were on the site usage page, just updates to the analytics on the site usage page, and the ability to see a heat map that will represent when your site is like the most used or the most viewed. So that was kind of neat just to kind of see those
SharePoint
ads.
Power Hour last
Yeah,
week.
we just
a week
did
and a half or
analytics.
2 weeks ago was about analytics, so we'll have to redo that.
Yeah, we'll have to add
Keeps
in
changing.
some stuff. Yeah, I mean, honestly, doing training and stuff like that, you're just constantly going in and, like, adjusting. But it's good. You know, it's good to get these updates. Yeah. And then also, like I mentioned, the mega menus. So a lot, I mean, I was talking to Randy, or we were talking on Twitter, Randy Driscoll, who we worked with at Rackspace. They do a lot of branding and stuff like that, and I remember us creating those mega menus for customers, and it was like an ordeal to create.
Over the years, it's been a big request. From
Yeah, and that's the
customers.
whole idea of basically having like your global navigation, and you hover over it, and you can kind of add images and like kind of just do some design and kind of get that bigger.
Yeah, with hub sites now you have that.
You have that
place
that
where you can
ability.
define that.
Yeah, so that's really neat. And then also communication sites will be the root, which is pretty interesting. So they will become the root site for your tenant, which makes sense because that's a lot of people build their intranets from that site.
Is that in place now for new tenants?
That was one thing I wasn't sure if that was in place or in the future. But yeah,
a lot
that's
of
definitely
people want
something
to
that's at
take
least
their
coming.
existing tenants and make the root homepage a communication site. So I think hopefully they'll provide a way to do that.
Yeah, and I think there's a way to do it with PowerShell now, but yeah, this would be a much better thing to kind of start that way. And then one thing they were talking about news a little bit, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with news.
News and pages.
Yeah.
I mean, people. Okay, so when Modern came out, we still got a lot of. We get pushback from customers and an adoption of the new Modern pages because of people are used to the publishing pages and all the things publishing pages let you do, like have custom page layouts and have audience targeting and have all these things people have gotten used to having. They don't want to upgrade to Modern and then have all these things taken away. But now they introduced this new concept of modern pages, modern page layouts, and new ways that you can configure the way the news looks on your page. Like a lot having to do with like that corporate communications main portal site concept.
Yeah, and like even if you are an organization that's large enough to have kind of like the external and internal communications, you can easily take something like maybe from like your public website, post a link in your news web part, and it shows up just like a news article. So instead of having to do like an RSS feed, which we know a lot of customers still like to use, you can actually just post that link right in there. And I'm sure you could probably figure out a way to create a flow to do that for you, or something. So that was pretty cool too.
Kind of
so
like
it just
on
shows
Twitter
up
when you post a link and it kind of pulls in the images and things like that.
It just like
So,
populates. It looks like a news item, even though it's coming from an external site. So that's cool. Yeah, and then you said the audience targeting, being able to do that right to an AD group. So that's fantastic. That'll make it very easy. The custom layouts, and then the web part connections, which is
web part connection
huge.
with modern
So that's
web
called,
parts.
they call it dynamic data now. That's the new name for it. But that's really, really, I think one of the biggest things when we work with customers when they're trying to figure out the modern pages and switching over to that is, I have all these connected web parts, and I have these filters, and I have these different things. I can't do that in modern. And kind of creating that composite thing, the dashboard, as people say.
My answer to that has really been, in the past year or so, my answer to that has been, well, you can create a Power App, and you can put all those listen things in the Power App and have that be sort of mimicking that same concept of having connected web parts because you can just pull in all that data and use it that way. But now you'll be able to have it on a page and have...
and I think the one example they used where they had like the file viewer web part and then a list of documents. And so right now we know the file viewer web part, you pick a document and that's it. But they were showing how you could like click on different documents and that file viewer web part would update. So that's kind of a simple example, but that's the kind of thing that they're showing. So I think it's starting out with just like a few web parts. and then they'll continue to kind of expand that. So that's really
I
exciting.
have a blog post that I wrote a while back on all the modern web parts. I'm really going to need to update that.
Oh yeah, there's been a lot. So just even this week. And then another thing was when you're picking images for your pages, you can actually, and this is huge because we've actually seen organizations request this or have issues with this, but you can actually require them to pick from a set of approved images. So your
who has
corporate
very
branding,
strict marketing departments. So yes, you can have a predefined, like in one place where
and that
your
same
approved
image
images are, and make that be the place people pick from. So you don't have people uploading a bunch of random unapproved images.
Or just images that don't, I mean, the biggest problem really it's just the things that don't look good.
Yes,
you know?
Yes, not everybody
like they pick
is
appropriate
an artist.
images, but not necessarily ones that are like high res and
right,
that kind of stuff.
True.
So that's I've
you
gone on
know,
many
like
sites.
dancing Giphies on the website.
Gone on many sites and been like, that's a good choice. And then also they talked about the content approval and flow integration for pages. So the whole ability to, as you update pages and kind of getting approval on those for whether it's news or actual like web pages, they're building that in, so it will just be built right in.
Not only is there content approval for the pages themselves, but now there's a way to do, I was in a different session that was more Power Apps and Flow, and it was you can do approval for joining a hub site, because apparently now, since hub sites have come out, these companies end up with hub sites with all these sites connected to the hub sites that you just end up with this bunch of clutter, because apparently, you know, when people create a site, they can just join whatever hub site they want. So there's a way now to go ahead and create a flow where you can create an approval process for someone to join a hub site. And that way, those people that are marketing, you know, that are whoever's in control of that hub site has more granular control over what ends up connected to it and showing in there.
Yeah, definitely.
You get SharePoint expansion and SharePoint it goes what is it?
The sprawl?
Yes.
Yeah.
We still have SharePoint sprawl in modern, maybe worse than the before.
Yeah, especially with groups, and that can kind of get complicated too.
And of course, with creating groups, there is a way with PowerShell to control who can create groups in the first place. Like I have that in our IW Mentor tenant. We have hundreds of students. I can't just completely open it up to have anyone create all the sites, all the Office 365 groups they want. So I have it more tightly controlled. So companies can do that too, but now you have all these different levels, different places where you can have control over that.
Yeah, and also seeing and that's I think something we were going to talk about is just the admin center, like the new admin center for SharePoint, being able to, like specifically even with hub sites, being able to easily make something a hub site, which currently we could only do with PowerShell, which I know is frustrating to a lot of people that can't use PowerShell, aren't allowed to. And so you can now go into the admin center, make something, and then also associate sites to that hub site and do some of that stuff. So that's really, really good that that's coming. So let's talk about lists. So I think we saw the SharePoint conference in May was the first we saw of the list template and kind of creating lists.
They announced a new way. When you go to a site and click to create a list, there's going to be a new sort of interface for what type of list you want instead of the old school pick a template.
Yeah.
That hasn't appeared yet, at least in any of my tenants.
Seems like it's coming pretty soon.
But they were talking about it?
Yeah, and they were also talking just about we've had ability in the past to like import from Excel.
Remember that?
Yeah.
You could import a whole list from Excel and you could and it just worked and then it just all of a sudden kind of with new modern browsers it just kind of stopped working.
It didn't really work very well,
Pasting into Datasheet View kind of stopped working. So now they've got this new feature where you can import spreadsheets to become a list, but
it's got really neat features where once you get the data into SharePoint, you can then sit there and like update your columns and decide what certain columns you may not want to show.
And if you have multiple tables in your spreadsheet, it will actually let you pick to, like, you could actually have multiple tables become multiple lists.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool because previously it would take a lot of like pre-work in the Excel spreadsheet to like get everything in the right order.
Exactly right.
So that's definitely, and also location columns they mentioned, which of course would be for libraries as well, but just the ability to tag a location and actually have that.
Location columns were one of those things that kind of appeared in SharePoint 2013, but it was really only something that devs could use for custom things.
Yeah.
But now location columns an actual
end user.
It's just there for end users to be able to use, to be able to have, like a list of customers and have their location, so then you can map them out. And
and it's probably something that could also be really maybe eventually used in like Power Apps and
and
things
there's
like Power
the
BI.
Bing Maps connector that Power Apps and Flow can use too.
Yeah, definitely. And so then we talked about it earlier, but one of the things I was very excited about was I have tried to use the conditional formatting in lists and libraries.
Oh, the JSON.
Yeah, and I just have failed miserably. And I consider myself a low coder. Like I can do some stuff. But yeah, trying to use but trying to use that was just really, really complicated for me. And I'm sure a lot of people have felt that as well. So seeing that they're actually going to give like almost like the WYSIWYG, being able to kind of like create that conditional formatting right there in the properties pane without having to get into JSON for just simple stuff was really, really neat.
Is it kind of like Excel conditional formatting where it's got like a user interface that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like clicking and like it was like you click the color, you put in like a value, like that kind of thing.
And there's a row formatting now too, which with the JSON way, it wasn't really, you're defining it per column. So then it would show up in whatever view you were in. That formatting was just tied to that column, but now this row formatting concept is going to apply to just a view, and that way you could say, everything that's got a status of pending, the whole row is yellow, or approved, it's green, and things like that, just like Excel.
Yep, definitely. And let's see, and also just like the ability, they talked about like multiple geo support, so being able to connect, all your sites to a hub, like so if they're in different locations across the world, connect them all to a hub, and then being able to roll up content from all of those, and the kind of having the support around that is pretty interesting. Nice. Yeah, so I know that'll be a big deal for a lot of organizations that have kind of been holding off, that have multiple locations all across the world that have been kind of holding off on hub sites and stuff. So that'll be interesting to see how that progresses. And then we talked about managing hub sites from the admin center, and then the approval that we talked about with the flow. And then also, so with OneDrive, kind of flipping to OneDrive for a second, one thing that I know would be exciting for a lot of people that I hear complaints about is the Mac stuff. Or no, I was just going to say that the ability to do a lot of the things that we've had in OneDrive for a little while on PC, and then now they can do like files on demand and live co-authoring and stuff like that in Mac.
Mac users. So now they can have that.
So that's really interesting. What were you thinking of?
One of the cool demos that I saw with OneDrive was that they took a picture on their phone, and then they were uploading it to OneDrive on their phone, and they were prompted for metadata. So you're prompted for metadata directly from, so OneDrive on the phone knew the SharePoint document library's metadata that it needed. So they uploaded the photo and filled out the metadata right there on the phone. And so, because metadata has been, kind of tricky in the past. Sometimes the user has to remember to go back to the list and fill it in later, and they never do. And so this is making it a lot more approachable, because some, customers and people, users over the years have just kind of given up on the metadata concept and people filling it out and remembering. So this kind of brings it to them and makes it so that it's easy and obvious and not like a chore.
Yeah, not as much of a chore for sure. And also you can create columns in OneDrive, which is pretty interesting. So you can
that's probably
create,
part of
because we all know that's connected libraries in OneDrive.
Yeah, OneDrive is just a SharePoint document library. So we know.
But actually releasing the ability to create columns and do lists like views is pretty interesting. So
so is that in just your own personal OneDrive, or like the OneDrive app on the phone?
It was actually, they were showing it in the browser, so it may just be in the browser for right now.
Oh, okay.
So then we talked a little bit about the AI and cognitive services and how we kind of saw this trend across all of these sessions that was like coming up, whether we were talking about Power Apps or we were talking about Teams, we're talking about SharePoint. So they actually showed the document cards, which basically is where you hover over a document, whether it's in OneDrive or SharePoint. The tile view. You can hover over that, and you can get things like, it will basically look at that document, It'll pull analytics for it. It'll show the average reading time. It could even show key points from the document.
Whoa.
That it's actually looking at the document and pulling that out and
That's
showing you,
crazy.
just kind of like in a little like card.
That's so futuristic.
Yeah, so that's really exciting though. And also seeing, there was a demo, I think they were showing basically how easy it is to kind of go in and create these like cognitive services, basically like going into Azure and stuff like that. So that was really interesting just to see how developers can take that and run with it. And so I think there's an example we'll talk about when we get to Power Apps. But they also just talked about cognitive services can detect content like in an image. That was the thing that they were saying, that it can detect content in an image and then trigger a flow off of that. Oh. So they use this really funny example of like looking for cupcakes in an image. And there was basically this cupcake meter that determined, like, is there a cupcake in this image? Yeah, the cupcake meter. And it would send a flow depending on what that result is. And that was all just the cognitive service looking at the image and determining whether or not, the probability of there being a cupcake in the image.
That's very cool.
So that kind of stuff is just really, really exciting.
The probability of cupcakes, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we always want that to be high, very high. And so they talked a little bit about just like with the cognitive services, it could be extracting data from images and files, like I mentioned, like so OCR and things like that. And then the flow integration to cognitive services, so it can kind of help run, business processes off of what it finds. And then auto transcription, which you mentioned earlier, which is in stream and in the recorded meetings, basically being able to search and find things that are said in the video, and not just tagged on the
not
in
just
the metadata. Yeah. So yeah, what would you say your key takeaway is for SharePoint and OneDrive in general? Are there any other updates?
Stop using classic sites.
Yeah. So actually, that was my first note was stop using classic. Yeah. Start planning to go to modern.
Yeah, so kind of
it's
like
painful, I know, but do it.
What I've been telling people, like just about InfoPath, stop creating new InfoPath forms. Use Power Apps. So in this case, it's stop creating classic sites. Stop just creating new ones. And Office 365 groups, it's easy because those are already modern.
Yeah.
So just try. If you've got an old school classic site, try to embrace. Try just doing it like we do with some of our customers. Yeah. Do a copy. Do like a new site collection and have that as a copy to see what you'll be able to accomplish in the new modern version of what you're currently doing in classic, and build that out and just see for yourself that the capabilities are there. I mean, there's not much I can think of that you're not, maybe it's at least 90% what you could do.
Yeah, it's definitely getting harder to make the argument against it, for sure. Yeah. And I think, at the very least, one of the best things to do is just to start looking and deciding what are the gaps, right? Like, what are the gaps between, and what are potential workarounds? Is there looking at, their timelines for these updates and stuff like that and kind of figuring that out. But I think it's really, really important because you don't want to get into a situation. Yeah, and what I've actually noticed is once here.
Yeah, she went to a search session yesterday while I went to the Teams and bots session.
We split up.
So I cannot wait to hear about search. We haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah, so Microsoft Search. So I am a search person. I love everything we can do with search. I've been working fast search, all of that stuff. I really, really enjoy using that stuff and making cool business processes and content roll-ups and things like that. So Microsoft Search was announced here yesterday, and basically the idea is that they're going to have one search experience, so like one search experience that has specific capabilities, and that's going to grow to be throughout the entirety of Microsoft 365. So right now we can see it in Bing, we can see it in SharePoint, we can see it in Office.com, and that'll just continue to grow. So basically you're going to have this search bar that'll eventually be in your Office client, like your Office clients like Word and PowerPoint. It'll be in other apps inside of in Microsoft 365, like
They're bringing
Sway
it to you just wherever
Planner.
you're working, just wherever you happen to be.
And so it's basically the whole idea being that they want to get this centralized search experience, so it's the same across the board, whether you're mobile, whether you're on your desktop, and then you have the ability to kind of get a bunch of different stuff. So they listed some things yesterday. There was a people search, which really was very thorough people search. Like you can get a lot of information. It can connect into LinkedIn, pull information from their LinkedIn profile as well as whatever they have in Office 365. They had Q&A, so they actually have the ability, an admin can go in and set up like an FAQ Q&A kind of thing, and people can search through that and get results about, where is the, timesheet, or how can I request vacation time? Like they can ask questions like that, real language, and get responses from that Q&A. Bookmarks as well, so you can set specific things as bookmarks that are kind of key places,
like individual
HR
documents.
It can be documents. It can be external sites. It can be pretty much anything that you want to do with that. Files, of course, sites, and conversations. And the conversations is really interesting because it gets really, really granular. It looks at things in Yammer and stuff like that. So that's really interesting. And so basically the idea being that all of these components will be available throughout all these different search experiences, whether you're, like I said, in Office.com or you're in SharePoint or you're searching on Bing. And then also improved search experience coming to Outlook. So I know we've had pretty much the same search experience in Outlook for quite a while, so there's definitely an improved experience coming there. And then the search admin, so there will be a search admin center. So we'll be able to be, instead of having to kind of go into each thing and each different admin center and work and search in each of those, it'll be a centralized admin center where you can look at analytics and security, manage those bookmarks and Q&A that I mentioned, best bets and things like that. So that's really exciting. And one of the things that what they mentioned, which is something that I've kind of talked about a little bit, is the ability to customize modern search. So with classic search, we were often doing things like custom refiners, custom verticals, really making search specific to an organization. And so in modern search, obviously we don't have that ability quite yet, but they were really explaining how the key was to get this Microsoft search launched and running. And then in 2019, they're going to start looking at the extensibility and the customizations and stuff like that. So hearing that and being able to customize refiners and do those kind of things. So hearing that was really cool and definitely exciting for those that like to work within search. And they have a lot more in store for this. So this is just the beginning. They were showing some really cool things that they were doing with maps, like a company can have a map of their office, and you can search for somebody, and it will show you exactly on that map where their office is. So just some really neat stuff that will be coming later. So I think my key takeaway with that is just don't fret about search. I think it's going to be awesome. It's only going to get better because I know some people have been kind of hesitant or not really sure what's going on with modern search, but I think it's the best path forward for that for sure.
Yeah, great.
All right, so Power Apps. Want to chat through all the
having to do with Power Apps. This is funny because the most popular tweet I think that I've done in the last couple of days was the fact that Power Apps is going to have sort of like a data sheet view. So tables and galleries in Power Apps, you've been able to insert them, and they're mostly read-only. And there have been ways to sort of make it so that you can edit them, but it's a lot of work. It's pretty painful. So now they announced that you're going to be able to have an editable data sheet view, like table in Power Apps. So that's huge. That's been a big thing that people like, because especially when you create apps that have like this parent-child relationship, you want to be able to say fill out an expense report and have all the line items. Mm-hmm. You want to quickly be able to fill out those line items as if you're in a spreadsheet and just quickly go through it and not necessarily have to pull up a form and take an extra couple of clicks for each thing. So that's a big thing that people seem to like. They said that they've made a lot of quality improvements in Power Apps and performance improvements because when it first came out, it was kind of painfully slow, but the app checker also helps with that. So there is a new app checker that came out probably a couple of months ago that is a panel down the right side in Power Apps that lets you know about different issues you might be having in your app. And another big thing that they are announcing is this the accessibility concept. So you'll not only be able to see issues and maybe formulas that are broken in your app to go troubleshoot them, in this panel, you'll be able to see accessibility issues. So it's going to be doing things like looking at your font sizes and looking at colors and contrasting colors and giving you a heads up where there are places that your app needs to have, you take a look at it and take a look at at colors that you're using for accessibility.
Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, so I don't use that much, the Common Data Service personally. I don't use it that much because Common Data Service is more of a premium, and we have our customers, a lot of smaller companies that don't necessarily have the budget to just pay for this premium, Power Apps plan that has the Common Data Service in it. Just that's how it tends to go. But
reality.
they have made some Common Data Service improvements. You can add attachments in the Common Data Service and improved accessibility in there. And you've also have the admin visibility and control. Of course, we've already seen that you have the ability to see a graph having to do with the analytics of the performance of your app. They've improved those analytics. Now, the thing about the analytics is that you need to have a Power BI license to be able to see that. But on the info screen, let's see. Some of the things that they announce have to do with, and I tweeted this out. It's the October announcements. Some of these things we've seen before, like formulas. You have a format text button now when you're writing formulas that kind of splits everything out and makes it so it's not all mashed together in one little formula box. One of the things that they're adding that's not in there yet, you guys are going to love this. It's like a cascading drop-down. So we've always been able to do cascading drop-downs in Power Apps if you know how to write a filter command and configure that correctly and point it to all the right fields. But there is going to be like more of a nice wizard user interface to be able to do this cascading drop-down concept. That, a cascading drop-down is something like if you have a drop-down that lists all the states, and then you pick Alabama, then the next drop-down that has cities is going to be automatically filtered to only show cities in Alabama. So that's the concept, and that's one of the really common things over the years that everybody has wanted to be able to do in InfoPath, SharePoint forms, and Power Apps. So you've been able to do it in Power Apps. They're just making that a little easier now.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's one of the highest requests that we have, the biggest request that we have.
Yeah. It's the simple things. You also have a concurrent function that you can run. So to be able to improve the performance of, say, the on visible or on start of your app, and maybe you have it collecting a bunch of things, setting a bunch of variables, well, you can use a concurrent function now to just say, I want this and this and this and this and this to happen all at the exact same time. So it can just set all your variables. Of course, one can't be dependent upon another one. They all have to be, whatever's one can't be dependent on another variable that you're setting, but it's another way to be able to make just opening the app run a little faster.
And I saw in the future they're going to have support for, they mentioned like complex server queries. So is that something along the lines of some of the list issues that we have run into?
I'm not sure. Maybe that goes along the lines of the indexing and the indexing fields. I'm not sure about that one off the top of my head, though.
Delegable, that was the word I was looking for. The delegable issues.
Oh, gosh.
I didn't know if that was related.
Don't get me started on that. Another one of the big things they've done is, I'm not sure if it's in the product right now yet, but I haven't seen it myself, but again, along the lines with trying to make this a more approachable solution for more business users, is they've made more pre-configured screens. So, I mean, it's just kind of time-consuming sometimes to go in there and build your app out, create all the screens, put a toolbar here and a button there and all your little form fields. And so they've made some new pre-configured screens for you where you can just, just plug it in and go, or just tweak it from there. So like not only a form screen, but a send an email screen. So we've always been able to send an email directly from Power Apps. We even had a whole SharePoint Power Hour about how to send emails straight from Power Apps without using Flow.
Yeah.
But now there's one of the little pre-configured screens got it right in there of sending an email, and just with the to and the subject and the body and all that. So those are not only do they make it more easy and approachable for business users and to make it less complex, but it also, even for those of us who are more advanced in Power Apps, it's time saving. It helps, and everything they do in there having to do with the colors and the templates that they give you for colors and pre-configured screens. It all just makes it a faster experience for just knocking out those apps and just not taking as many hours.
Yeah, just in
of
the
your
design
life.
portion.
Yeah.
Although I find the design portion a lot of fun, like
It
figuring
is.
out different ways to make it look a little bit more modern.
Yeah, and they've improved a little bit having to do with the way the tree view is going to look, just in general, making it easier for people to get around in the tree view. Of course, you can always search for the names of fields that you're looking for over there. Grouping has been in there for probably a couple of months, the ability to group things.
Yeah.
So it's got enhanced group control now. So grouping is going to be where you want to organize, kind of like if you were using InfoPath before. In InfoPath, you could go create little sections to organize your fields. Grouping is a way in Power Apps where you can organize your controls and keep them together. So if I have a button, it looks just like a button, but it's really an icon and a label and a rectangle. It's all this stuff together, so I can like group that together. Or you could group sort of your whole navigation that you have at the top of every page, group that together. So it will, when you bring things up and down in your layers in your app, it will go together and you can copy and paste it and move around together.
Yeah. Did you see, like, in the distant future, that SharePoint document library integration with
Power
Apps?
Yeah, Power Apps. So that's one of
that's something you can never do with InfoPath.
Yeah, with InfoPath, you had the what was it called? The document information panel.
Yeah, that's right. That's
document information panel. Woo, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So the document.
The dip.
The dip.
That's
yes.
what we used to call it.
You had a way of creating your metadata in your library and then going and opening and customizing an InfoPath document information panel, which was the only way you had of rearranging your fields and having sort of a form for people to fill out when they're when they're in a document.
Yeah.
But now, then people have probably been yelling about it. Now we're going to have the ability to do Power Apps for a document library. Now, technically, you have been able to always do Power Apps for a document library because you can go create a Power App. You can just go create a standalone Power App, and in the interface where you're pulling in your list, your custom list, there's a little box at the bottom of all your custom lists where you can just type something in. So you can go and type the name of a library in there now, even without that, and be able to pull in that library and be able to work with the metadata like that. But this is just going to be, again, a more approachable, streamlined experience for that. Let's see. Flow, Flow has got, basically they added a few, little bit more improving, admin, basically being able to monitor Flow. So like, for example, when we were talking about analytics in Power Hour, we noticed, look, they have Flow where inside of creating your report, like your logs in the admin experience, where you can report on when people create flows and get notified and things like that. So they've improved a lot of the ability to actually have actions in Flow having to do with reporting on the Power Apps and flows in your organization, so geared towards admins. So they've improved a lot about that because, over time you end up with all these Power Apps floating around and you don't know who's doing what, and you kind of want to get a handle on that. So there's improved admin around that. And with Flow, even some of the actions and things that they've added in and kind of it just appeared there over the last couple of months that have been great improvements. It's not necessarily something that jumped out at people. So what I liked about a Flow session that I went to the other day was that they were doing demos of really just examples to give you ideas because, like, for example, the hub site, sort of connecting to a hub site and getting approval sort of for that site that you're connecting to the hub site, getting approval by the hub site manager for it to show, that's something that you can set up the approval for in a Flow, but When it comes to what happens afterwards, or any kind of reminders, or who gets the approval, or what data gets sent where, that customers will say, well, can I get a reminder after 3 days? And Microsoft's saying, you can do anything you want to in here.
Yeah.
So we're just showing you a few examples. Like, this is an open canvas. But it really does help to go to these sessions to see them actually build, even though the commands may have been there for months.
Yeah.
To see them build and get ideas
Yeah.
for what's in there and what you can use it for. And I actually am doing a session tomorrow that I'm talking about new out-of-the-box approvals in SharePoint, and I'm going over the little request sign-off concept, but I'm going to go and talk about all these common requests requirements that people have around Flow, and what is in Flow to be able to accomplish that, to be able to get those built in yourself. So even if it's not in a template, even if it's not out, screaming out at you, it's probably in there. There's probably a way to do it. But Flow is just one of those things where sometimes it helps to see a template or to see someone demo it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many templates to try to sort through.
There are hundreds of connectors, and
I think they said over 200.
Yeah, over 200, and more and more actions available now for dealing with SharePoint and lists and documents. So, yeah.
Yeah, they mentioned that there was also the set a reminder flow, which is kind of an easy way if you have a date in your
Yes, that's
list
something
or
that
library.
they're adding soon.
Yeah.
Because it's such a common request that people want to be reminded. They want to just have a date, and that, I mean, we've been doing consulting
SharePoint,
for like
SharePoint designer
for 10 years.
workflows.
This is a huge, oh my goodness, this is a huge request.
Yeah.
So that you just want to be able to have a date column, like a due date or a project go live date or whatever it is, and just say, I want people to get a reminder. And we've done all these crazy things with SharePoint designer workflows and information management policies, and just to kind of accomplish that, third-party products to accomplish that. But
weird looping and workflows.
That's something that they said that they're adding soon, is just a quick, I don't know if it's a template, or I'm not sure the way they made
Looks
it
like
sound.
It's a template,
Yeah, of just quickly saying, here's the date field, here, set a reminder for, this time.
Yeah.
So do we have any more on the list, or is it, I think it's about time to start wrapping it up.
There are just some other connector updates where, like, the better file copy move options. So, like, when you're moving files, and then also creating shareable links for files.
Create a shareable link as an action now.
And actually being able to, like, put that, then send that somewhere. So that's kind of neat.
Send that in an email.
I think the example they used was moving something to, like, an archive. Like, that's a secured archive. That you can only view the documents, you can't edit them, and then like taking a link of that and then putting it in the library where it was, so people can like, the one version of the truth, as we say.
Stuff that just was more complex and took longer to build before is just going to be there.
Yeah. But I think one thing is that we are, if anybody was in the session, we are in the SharePoint Business Application Partner Program.
Yes.
So cool.
They had us up on the screen yesterday in one of the Microsoft sessions. That was pretty exciting.
That was exciting.
Wasn't expecting that. Well, I think that just about wraps it up.
Yeah.
That was a lot of updates, and there's still just a ton more because it's only the middle of the week.
Yeah.
I'm doing a session about the new out-of-the-box approvals tomorrow, and then Friday at 12:45. I'm not sure if you're going to be still around. Friday at 12:45. I'm doing a really cool session on Power Apps and like really sort of a deep dive into logic, and it's pretty advanced. And that's the one I'm looking forward to the most. So y'all try and stick around for that. But yeah, it's only the middle of the week, so the way that these conferences work is that you kind of start high-level, fluffy talk at the beginning of the week, and as you go further in the week, you get more details and more detailed advanced demos. So I'm really looking forward to what else we have in store for us, and we'll have a lot more to talk about at our other Power Hours. So it's I
highly recommend going into some of the deep dives into the team stuff, because I think those are going to be really interesting, and also some of the flow things we were talking about. But I think that covers it. And definitely check out if you are just wanting to kind of recap or look at some of the things that we've talked about. Either look our Twitter accounts. We've definitely tweeted some articles and stuff like that. And also just check the SharePoint blog and Teams blog.
Joelle Schmoel.
Yeah, it's very
Wonderlara.
Very professional Twitter name.
Wonderlara is not that professional. And it's YouTube/Wonderlara. That's our channel. And wonderlara.com is my blog, and iwmentor.com is our site, and we actually have a free Power Apps email course you can go check out, iwmentor.com, so I'd give a little plug there.